Most people believe motivation is something you generate, something you summon, something you force, something you either have or don't. When motivation disappears, the conclusion is usually harsh. I'm lazy. I've lost discipline. There must be something wrong with me. But motivation doesn't disappear randomly. It fades when awareness is missing. Before motivation drops, something else happens first. Attention narrows. Feeling dulls. Experience becomes background noise. Most people never notice that shift. They only notice the outcome. No drive and no energy. No movement. So they look for motivation as the solution, when motivation was never the starting point. Motivation is not a cause. It's a response. It responds to meaning. It responds to clarity. It responds to feeling connected to what you're doing. When that connection fades, motivation cannot survive. Modern life trains people to skip awareness entirely. You wake up already stimulated. Notifications, noise, information, pressure. You move straight into doing, without ever checking how you are. The body hasn't been consulted. The mind hasn't settled. The emotional state is unknown. But action is expected anyway. So you push. You try to override resistance instead of understanding it. You treat lack of motivation as an enemy. You apply pressure where attention is missing. That can work for a while. Then it stops working completely. Because pressure without awareness creates burnout, not momentum. When people say they can't motivate themselves, what they usually mean is, I don't know what I'm actually feeling. And without that knowledge, there is nothing for motivation to attach to. Awareness is the ability to notice what is happening, without immediately trying to change it. Not analysis. Not self-criticism. Not fixing. Just noticing. Noticing tension. Noticing boredom. Noticing avoidance. Noticing resistance. Most people are uncomfortable with this because awareness slows things down. And slowing down exposes things that were previously being avoided. So instead of awareness, they reach for stimulation. Music. Scrolling. Background noise. Constant input. Anything that prevents them from sitting with their internal state. But stimulation doesn't restore motivation. It only postpones the moment you notice it's gone. Motivation returns naturally when attention reconnects with experience. That's why people sometimes feel motivated after a quiet walk, a long shower, or a moment of stillness. Nothing was added. No strategy was applied. Awareness returned. And motivation followed. This is why forcing discipline often backfires. Discipline without awareness feels violent. It feels like dragging yourself through life. Discipline with awareness feels grounded. It feels like alignment. The same action, a completely different internal experience. Awareness answers questions motivation cannot. Why does this feel heavy? What am I avoiding? Where did I disconnect? What actually matters right now? Motivation doesn't answer those questions. Awareness does. And once those questions are answered, motivation often appears on its own. Not as excitement, not as hype, but as quiet willingness. A readiness to move, because the movement makes sense again. Many people abandon awareness early because it doesn't feel productive. There is no immediate reward, no surge of energy, no sense of accomplishment. Sometimes it feels like nothing is happening at all. In a culture trained to measure progress through output, that feels uncomfortable. When you slow down enough to notice yourself, you may not feel motivated. You may feel flat, restless, uncertain. That doesn't mean awareness isn't working. It means you're no longer escaping your internal state. For a long time, movement replaced clarity. Doing replaced noticing. Stimulation replaced feeling. When those are removed, there is often a brief emptiness. Most people misinterpret that emptiness as failure. They think, this isn't helping. I should be doing more. I'm falling behind. But what's actually happening is that the nervous system is recalibrating. Awareness is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't motivate you immediately. It simply reveals what has been there all along. And once that becomes visible, motivation has something real to attach to again. This is why awareness feels slow, but its effects last longer. Motivation built on stimulation collapses quickly. Motivation built on clarity sustains itself. Nothing dramatic changes in the moment, but something subtle realigns. You stop forcing movement that doesn't make sense. And when movement returns, it feels cleaner, more honest, less exhausting. Most people don't lack motivation. They lack space. Space to notice. Space to feel. Space to reconnect. And that space isn't created by doing more. It's created by pausing long enough to see what's already there. Awareness doesn't make life easier, but it makes it clearer. And clarity is what motivation has been waiting for. One quiet shift often happens when awareness becomes part of your life. You stop demanding motivation before you understand yourself. You stop asking, why can't I move? And start asking, what am I disconnected from? That question changes the relationship entirely. Motivation no longer feels like a test you're failing. It becomes a signal you're listening to. And when you respond to that signal with attention instead of pressure, movement returns naturally. Not faster, but steadier. Not louder, but more honest. If this reflection was useful, the next video continues from here. You can click on the next video when you're ready. And if you want to stay with this kind of work, subscribing simply makes it easier to come back.